Hi, we are now starting with Module 5, Impact of Renewables on Electricity Market, and its first block, Electricity Cost and Cost Structure. In this first block, we're going to answer some of the questions raised in the module introduction about the cost of electricity itself. Do we pay the same among European countries, for instance? Do we pay the same also in time, or are the prices going to vary? And then eventually, what's the cost structure for electricity? We are first going to look at that point based on some report of Eurelectric, which is the union of the electricity industry. In this report, Eurelectric is telling about the cost structure that we have today, and it is composed of three components. These are nicknamed here electricity, transport, and taxes. Electricity is for the energy component of the cost, so it's what truly costs the energy that you need at the socket. Then there is transport, which actually stands for transmission, distribution, and any grid-related cost. And finally, taxes stands for the taxes you usually pay to the government, like VAT and other taxes. And also policy cost, so there could be a carbon tax component or some other component, for instance, to subsidize the deployment and the operation of renewable energy generation capacity. Then we may look at the share of these various components in the electricity cost or the electricity price all over Europe. This is what this map shows, where all these small circles are giving for each and every country the share of the electricity cost that's related to energy in blue, to grid-related cost in yellow, and to taxes in red. If we look at these countries, we see great disparities. Focusing on Greece, Cyprus, and Malta, here for instance, you can see that more than half of the electricity cost is actually for the energy, while the grid-related cost and taxes are then less than half of the overall cost for your electricity. But if you go more north here and look at Denmark, it's pretty much the opposite. Only 15% of the electricity cost that you pay is for the energy component, while 66% is for taxes, and then the rest is for grid-related cost. So you can see that there are great differences among European countries. But now, how much do we actually pay? We can find the retail prices for all the European countries through different surveys made by the quarterly report on European electricity market. And this is an example that I use here, a report that was published over the second quarter of 2013 and which stands for the second quarter of 2012. In this report, you can look at a lot of figures about the electricity price over Europe for various types of consumers, and you have also more characteristics that are being studied. The report is generally available at this website, and this is part of the transparency initiative at the European level for people to be aware of the cost of energy and electricity. Looking at this map, we also see great disparity in terms of the retail prices for the small consumers. These small consumers are typically households, and here remember that the taxes are included, so it's all the components of the electricity cost. Some examples: the electricity prices of 25.09 eurocent per kilowatt hour in France, but then if you go to Ireland, the retail price for electricity reaches 59.01 eurocent per kilowatt hour. In Denmark, the electricity price is fairly average, you could say, with 32.78 eurocent per kilowatt hour. These figures were for the average price, retail price for electricity. But you may also look at the disparity among retail prices in various countries. For countries that have liberalized the electricity sector, you may choose your retailer, and different retailers may offer you different prices. In this same quarterly report on the European electricity market, for the same period, you can find this information with this kind of graph. You see here the average retail price that we already saw on the map. This would be with these black and green circles. And then with this band and blue dots at the end, you can see the range of potential retail prices with the minimum and the maximum that can be paid in these countries. We see on the left countries like Bulgaria with a single electricity price, retail price, and then you can expect this means that the electricity sector has not been liberalized yet. As you go towards the right, you have countries that are pretty far in the liberalization in the electricity sector, and you see a broader range of available retail prices. At the very right, we find again Ireland with a fairly high average retail price and an extremely broad range of available retail prices from simple to triple. But now, do we all pay the same also in terms of what type of consumer we are? We've discussed here prices for small consumers, typically households. But there may be different prices for the small consumer and for larger consumers. So you may think of small industry. Here we see a similar map as we had before, but these are the retail prices in euro cents per kilowatt hour for the larger consumers. This is for the same period and from the same source. We can compare directly some of the prices we've discussed before, for instance. So for these industry consumers, here the tax component is removed though. The price in France is of 14 euro cents 29 per kilowatt hour, and in Ireland is of 20.03 euro cents per kilowatt hour. In general, you will see lower prices for these larger consumers and industry consumers all over Europe. Eventually, we have access to a lot of information about electricity prices, especially for this energy component. The prices that we pay eventually as a small consumer or a larger consumer will reflect the prices in the wholesale market. All data for the wholesale market are available on the website of Nord Pool, for instance, in Scandinavia, and this should be the case for other markets in Europe due to this transparency requirement at the European level. If you were to look at prices in the Elspot, the dead market of the Nord Pool in Scandinavia, you can see the electricity prices, so wholesale prices, at each and every hour, every market time unit, and for each and every area. You actually can choose different type of subscription, for instance in Denmark, where you can have a flat price for electricity, so you will always pay the same for the energy component of electricity cost. But you may also choose to have a variable price, which then is supposed to directly reflect the price in the Nord Pool Elspot market. You can imagine, since you've been through the previous modules, that these wholesale electricity prices are changing all the time. They will change hour after hour, and they may change if you go from one area to the next. So therefore, as a consumer, the energy component may also change from one hour to the next, and depending on where you live in Scandinavia. Note also that the other components of the electricity cost are under study, and it might be that these other components will become more dynamic soon in the future, so that the grid-related costs reflect also the time of use, and the taxes may also reflect better the type, you could say, of electricity you are getting. If it's cleaner or not that clean, the carbon tax should actually represent that. Thank you very much. I would like now to invite you to use the self-assessment quiz to check your understanding.